Skylanders was a game that unified collectible figures and video gaming, and due to that exact reason, the game is fundamentally split into two parts, being the figure collecting aspect and the actual gaming experience. But when looking at both of them, which one comes out on top? As it seems to be highly debated nowadays as to whether building your collection of figures or playing these games is more enjoyable. That's exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video, so without further ado, let's jump right into it with some of the important things to know about collecting. Across the 6 Skylanders games, there were hundreds of figures to collect, which means both back then when Skylanders was still coming out and in the modern day, there's just so many to collect. It almost feels like a never-ending journey. There's only a few people out there who seem to have every single Skylander, and even when it feels like you have all of them, there's still variants, and there's still chase variants, and there's still Eon's Elites, and there's reposes, and there's so many different variations of Skylanders to collect. There's subsets upon subsets of Skylanders for you to go out and hunt down and find and add to your collection, which really does add to really the value of collecting as sort of a fun hobby when it comes to Skylanders. Also, when you have hundreds of figures, that's all you can do with them. They're physical pieces. You can display them. You can, set them up and recreate some cutscenes from the game maybe. There's a lot you can do with these physical figures, as they are fundamentally toys at the end of the day, but they're also sort of collectibles, and they're meant to be displayed or played with depending on what age you are. So you can do a lot with them, and it's a physical object versus a actual digital video game. So again, there are going to be some differences there, but Skylanders, you can really do anything with your figures, and there's tons and tons of them to collect. There's also variants to collect. So even when you finish your main collection, there's still variants for all these different holidays and stuff like that, and sort of also just some random variants. There's nitro variants, there's dark variants, there's legendary variants, there's all sorts of different types of variants. So if your favorite Skylander, if you have him, you play as him, you love how he looks, you can maybe get a variant of that Skylander, and then you have both of them. You can display them together and it'll look super cool. There's also chase variants. So for people who basically want to hunt down the rarest Skylanders out there, the ones that really weren't even marketed as being super rare or anything, and you kind of just had to hunt them down yourself, and you really weren't given any help by Activision, there are chase variants. Even nowadays, they're still very, very hard to find on sites like eBay and Mercari. They're very expensive, but for those dedicated collectors out there who really do want to finish their collection and want to have the rarest pieces out there, chase variants are for you. I know for the casual fans, you just got normal Skylanders, which again, they're not going to be nearly as expensive to collect. You can build a massive army of these guys for not too much, maybe $5 to $10 a piece for some of the cheaper cores and stuff like that are still awesome Skylanders. But then for those hardcore collectors who want the rarest you can possibly get and the most sought after Skylanders, you got chase variants. Skylanders is going to offer you figures either way, no matter what type of collector you are. They're also very displayable. I already touched on this a little bit earlier, but Skylanders, you can put them on a display and they look really awesome, whether you're sorting by game or whether you're sorting by element. Either way, it's going to be super cool, and you can display these guys however you would like. And some of them, especially like the Senseis and Skylanders just from the later games, have really high quality figures that look absolutely amazing displayed together. I love displaying all my Skylanders together. I think it looks absolutely awesome, especially again with Superchargers and Senseis, which have some really nice quality figures. It is also worth noting that Skylanders have done more than just hold their value, but they're actually increasing in value. Most Skylanders that aren't just super common, like starter pack Skylanders, are continue to grow in value and get more and more expensive over time. Of course, inflation will just naturally do this to anything, but Skylanders, it is kind of crazy. Some of them are getting very rare and expensive, so maybe that's a bad thing if you don't already have them, but if you do have a pretty filled out collection, your collection is increasing in value over time. I know this isn't really going to change a lot of people's opinions on whether collecting or gameplay is more fun, but it is something that's definitely worth noting. There is one big con to the whole collecting aspect though, and this is definitely the pricing. If you want to complete your entire Skylanders collection, you are going to spend thousands of dollars for some of these figures, which is absolutely insane, because at the end of the day, there's only 6 games, and for you to be able to complete these 6 games spending thousands of dollars is absolutely mind-blowing. Again, you are getting tons of figures to look awesome, you can display and do whatever you want with, but if you're doing it just to complete the games, it kind of doesn't make any sense to spend this much money, and I don't think anyone's actually doing that. But again, there's so many figures to collect, but of course the obvious drawback that comes with that is to actually complete your collection. For those completionists out there, it is going to cost tons and tons of money that a lot of Skylanders fans just won't have. And then when we look at the gaming side of things, there's actually only 11 games that I would consider mainstream line Skylanders games that aren't cheap free mobile games. of course, which is a far cry from the hundreds of Skylanders figures we actually get. As far as the games go, we got the 6 main console games. We've got the 4 main 3DS games from Spyro's Adventure to Trap Team. And then we have Superchargers Racing as well. Those are sort of the core 11 games, I would say. Of course, the core 6 are the main console games, but I would say those 11 make up the vast majority of what most people think of when they think of Skylanders and what they played as a kid or nowadays. So these Skylanders games, there's 11 of them, and to get all of them, it's going to cost you so much less, like an incomprehensibly less amount of money compared to completing your entire figure collection. It is so low. The difference is absolutely mind-blowing to complete your collection of Skylanders figures versus completing your collection of Skylanders games. To complete your collection of Skylanders games, depending on your console, it could cost up to like a couple $100. And if you want to complete your collection of Skylanders figures, again, it's going to cost like over $10,000. It's something absolutely mind-blowing like that. It's also worth noting when playing the games, there are version differences. So on different consoles and stuff, there's a bunch of different version differences. On the Wii U, you got that screen on the gamepad that has sort of extra different features that a lot of other consoles don't have. Then you look at, there's the Nintendo exclusive characters. There's some cool stuff in between different versions. Of course, X-Spec on PlayStation, Xbox is completely different than the Wii version. You could argue whether or not that's a positive or a negative, but that is something that exists. So it's cool that we get sort of variety when looking at the different consoles and what the games are like on each one. It is very cool that they do have some differences that makes it worth playing all of them. I would also say that in comparison, if you compare the average Skylanders figure to sort of just the average like collectible figure that was made in this time period this guy was coming out, so like 2011 2016, I think Skylanders figures are pretty high quality. I think they're pretty well made figures. They really hold up to like actual collectible figures that are just sold on their own as collectibles. But when you look at the Skylanders games, of course, at the end of the day, they are a kids game, and so they're not going to hold up to the same type of games that were coming out in 2011 to 2016. Some crazy big AAA games came out back then, and Skylanders, of course, at the end of the day, it is just a game that's made for kids and primarily made to capitalize on that sort of market of being able to push out this new toys to life subgenre of video games. And because of that, the gameplay isn't exactly top notch compared to a lot of other AAA games that are out there and a lot of the other stuff that Activision makes. I mean, if you compare the quality of a Skylanders game to the quality of a Call of Duty game, I mean, it's very different, especially when you look at something like Trap Team, which is just filled with glitches. So at the end of the day, as much as I love the Skylanders games, I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious that these games have some quality issues, as they weren't made to have the best graphics on planet Earth. They weren't made to have the most complicated and challenging difficulty of all time, like some like Elden Ring type of game would be. It's just made to be a fun game that utilizes figures in a fun way that would make kids just have a fun time overall, and I think it did a great job at that. But when you look at the video games, I think the most important thing to note is just you are going to have fun. When collecting figures, you're spending money and you're adding figures to this collection you have. It's going to look cool on display. You're filling out your collection. Doing that with anything is going to sort of bring you satisfaction. But when you're actually playing a video game, when you're actually going around playing as your favorite Skylander and throwing out attacks and jumping over blocks and moving around this giant beautiful world, at the end of the day, it is going to be more fun playing a video game than collecting figures. While collecting figures may be far more satisfying and may give you like a greater feeling of like, hey, I've actually completed something, I managed to do this. Playing the game, at the end of the day, it is a video game, which is always going to be more fun in my eyes. And I think the general public can agree that if you're going to play a game, you're going to get more enjoyability. I don't know if that's a word. You're going to enjoy it more than if you're just playing, or if you're just collecting figures for something. They aren't going to be able to move around and throw attacks around in real life. So it's a video game versus figures that are just going to sit still. So it's just up to you which one you're going to prefer, but I think a video game will always be more fun. Now, for my personal opinion on this topic, with everything sort of taken into account, I would honestly say I think the collecting aspect of Skylanders might just top the gameplay a little bit. I know this is a very heated debate, and it's always gonna like differ so much from person to person, but I think collecting Skylanders for me might just be the more fun sort of subcategory of Skylanders. I think when you collect them and you fill out your collection, it does look so cool, and it does give you this satisfying sort of like you've accomplished something feeling when you have a full collection collection for whatever your favorite game is or something like that. I know when I finally finished my Trapmaster collection, when Trap Team was my favorite game, it was an awesome feeling. I loved it. I could finally use every Trapmaster. Whereas again, it links back to I'm excited because I can I finally have a full collection, but I can also play as all of them in the game. So it's different. It's like, I feel like they go so hand in hand that it's kind of hard to just pick collecting figures over playing games, because when you're collecting the figures, I feel like most people buy them so that they can use them in game and not just leave them on display forever, of course, unless you're buying a chase variant or something like that. But at the end of the day, I want you guys to just, I've said at the end of the day so many times, it's probably so cringe at this point, but I want to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you guys think collecting figures or playing the Skylanders game is a better experience overall for you? Which one is more important, and which part is at the end of the day just better for Skylanders? I've said that way too many times in this video, but I hope you guys did enjoy. And I will say, I think collecting Skylanders is just a little bit on top for me. I think the collecting aspect just tops playing the games off by just a tiny bit, although I love both. And if I was still a little kid, I would definitely say playing the games is better. So thank you guys for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye, everybody.